And welcome back, footy fans, to another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I'm your host, Coach Donnie Hess here. And ladies and gentlemen, we are in the off season, and you know what? I like keeping the footy talk going. So, as per usual, over the last 3 seasons, I have done my supporter series. The last couple of years have been state leagues. I'm going to go back to the AFL this year, but with a fun caveat. I want to talk to American and international fans. I want to talk to fans that for some weird reason, have fallen in love with the fantastic game of Aussie rules football. And I thought what a perfect way to start is with a very good friend who I knew very, very well, the international part of my fans. Let's jump over to Scotland. Great friend, Liam. Liam, great to see you, sir.
How are you doing?
I am not doing too bad, sir. How are things in Scotland? I know the weather has not exactly been gracious to you over the last few weeks.
Oh, it's improving, but we get used to it. You know, the grey old town that I live in, that's what they call it, the grey old town. But it's just a nightmare. The weather's just been a nightmare.
Well,
But that's what it is. It's this time of year.
Well, I'm glad to see everything is fine. You have power, which is the best thing overall. Let's hop right into it, sir. We're going to talk some footy, which, as everybody can tell, being a Scottish man is probably a very interesting thing to love this sport. But before we get into the football, just a little bit about yourself personally, who you are, and a little bit about yourself outside of the game of football.
Well, my name's Liam, obviously, and obviously with the accent, I'm Scottish, and hopefully there's no subtitles needed. Um, I'm 45 and I drive buses for a living, and the rest is just footy. Footy, footy, footy. That's all I can say.
Well, there is nothing wrong with that. So it's always interesting when I meet international fans because we always have this fun thing. So I always ask it like this: what is your finding footy story?
My finding footy story, well, it kind of starts roughly 1994. My auntie and uncle live in Randwick, which is right next door to SCG area. And I just got like Guernseys in like merchandise sent across. And really, I was like, who's Sydney Swans? You know, you were getting Sydney Swans and didn't know who they were really, because the sport over here didn't get shown on TV. So I was asking my auntie, she's a Collingwood fan as well, so I don't know where the Sydney Swans came from, you know. But when we talk on the phone, she would explain this is AFL. Well, it was Aussie rules. It was back then, not AFL. And she would just explain. And from then on, I was always looking at scores and always looking for this, like anything to do with the Aussie rules. And I found it on Trans World Sports on a Saturday morning, and you would get like 5 minutes of the games the week before, and that's all you got. And I was always looking out for the red and white team because of the merchandise that I got. So that's where footy was introduced into my life.
It's fantastic. I absolutely love it. The confusion of getting a team's merchandise and not knowing who the hell they are. That is fantastic. I love it. So before we go into it, as you said, you kind of told me your club, but we'll discuss that a little bit later. What's your favorite part about the sport? I mean, obviously you got hooked on it. So what's your favorite part?
It's excitement. It's the fast, high scoring. Everything's just fast, open, exciting, and it's like end to end. Sometimes, yeah, a team may dominate, but it's constant, and there's none of this like boring build up where you get in some sports you're just waiting for the next play to happen. It's just full on. It's full on, and it's the way the sport brings people together as well that I've loved over the years. You know, I've made some really good friends, and that's only for being a Aussie Rules fan. You know, that's what I love. But the sport itself, it's the fast, free flowing footy. That's what I love.
Yeah, which is fantastic as a person in football, the football of European football fame.
Yeah.
Being in the heartland of that and being a footy fan is fascinating to me. I know that you and I go back and forth with our favorite football teams being huge rivals, but the best thing is that we're both Swans fans, so we have a mutual love as well. So it's
Yeah,
always
that makes
great.
up for it, doesn't it?
It does. It really, really does. Which is a lot of fun because I know the banter back and forth between you and I is always great, both for that. But then we also talk Swans in our love of that. So I got to ask. I know that with international leagues popping up in all sorts of countries, I know that there is some teams in Glasgow and Edinburgh. Have you ever played the sport? And if not, would you if you could?
I've never officially played the sport. Yes, I've kicked a ball about, you know, with like a couple mates on a summer's night where you're bored and there's nothing to do, but never played the sport. And if the option was there, I think I'm a bit old and unfit now, but I'd love to play it. I'd love to play it, and I can see myself being a ruckman. You know, that's a position I would choose. I'm not like 7 foot tall, but I just watch ruckmen and think I'd love their job. I'd
The
love
only
it.
the only thing with Ruckman though is being a coach and on that is that you almost have to have midfield conditioning, and that's as you said, not being fit could be a tester a little bit. But I've played ruck before. It is a ball sometimes.
Oh,
Just
I'd love it.
having that opportunity to tap the ball to teammates and different things like that. It is a lot of fun. So you kind of answered this next question, but I'm gonna go just the tiniest bit into a little bit of odd detail, and this is that you, as you said, you found footy by kind of finding things. When did you kind of dive into watching like full games, or can you watch full games nowadays? I know with the time difference, it's not always easy.
You can watch full games now with being a global member. There's an app, Watch AFL, that you get with your global membership. So everything's on demand. So if the game's at 4 a.m., for example, over here, and you can't make it because of work commitments or something, at least you can watch it when you come home. You need to avoid social media if you don't want any surprises, but at least you've got that opportunity now. My first game to like really full watch was actually live in Melbourne in 2003 when I was on a working holiday, and that was my first game I actually seen live. You know, I hadn't seen a live game before that. It was as we touched on earlier, Transworld Sports. That's all you had back then. You know, if you didn't have the World Wide Web or anything like that to catch up on. So yeah, that's my first game was 2003, but now everything's on demand. No excuses, Donny. No excuses.
Well, you know me. It's very well known amongst the Swans fans that I'm crazy. That games will start at 2:45 in the morning, and I get up for it. And I know I go back and forth with you because sometimes work keeps you from it. So I will ask if you've seen the game. If you haven't, I will make sure not to give you any spoilers because I know I've went through my story of how my a game in 2017 was spoiled for me, and that has literally kept me from ever missing a game live whenever I absolutely can. So,
Yeah.
as we've kind of established, your club is the Sydney Swans, and again, this it's another reason why him and I go back and forth so much, being a fellow Swan supporter myself. But I mean, I get it. You were getting merchandise, but was that the other reason, or was there some other thing that drew you to the red and white?
No, that was the main reason. But it was something new, something different in my life that I'd never experienced before. So that really got my interest. And when I spoke to like my auntie or my uncle was never interested, he was just a Rangers fan or a Scottish Rugby Union fan. That was it.
Mhm.
But when I spoke to like my auntie on the phone, I would always ask the question. So I'm interested in knowing about this, and she would explain certain rules, and this is what this does. And but she says every season the rules change, and you know from 1994 to 2024, that's not changed. The rules are always changing. I can't keep up with it some of the days. You know.
I will not disagree with you on that. I know sometimes I really do think they make change just for change's sake, which is always fascinating. So, and you kind of also kind of covered this next question that what was can you explain to me the first Swan item that you were given or bought? Like can I know you, as you said you got it in the mail. What was the first thing that you got, Sydney Swans?
The first thing I got was this. It was like a grey sweatshirt with thick red piping down the sleeves. It was a long sleeve thing with the Sydney badge. Now the old logo, not this one. You know yourself. It was the old. It was a thinner swan's head.
Mhm.
That was my first one, and as my mum says, she had to amputate it from me if she needed to wash it because it never left. You know, I wore it all the time. And that was my first thingy, and it was great. I loved it.
That is fantastic. I absolutely love it. That is great. I had to amputate it. That is fantastic. So I think I know the answer to this, but I always love it when I talk with fans, no matter in Australia or over here. I always have this fun part is I like people describing their fandom because everybody's fandom is different. Some people are they're into it, but there's a point when they stop. And then there's people that are absolutely manic. They have to know everything about the club. That their club is their entire life. So for you, Liam, can you describe your fandom for me in a way that in a way to kind of tell people how big a fan you are of the Sydney Swans?
Well, when I watch games, I see people that I know on TV like sitting in the front row, and I get really jealous. And for those like 2 hours, I hate them for being at that game. You know, no, in all seriousness, I do get jealous that they're there actually watching the game. But I sit there with my Go Bloods banner, and I sit there with scarves on. You know, it could be like 30 degrees outside. I've got my scarf on. I don't care what temperature it is. But I feel that I'm closer now to the club and wanting to know more since 2022 when restrictions and COVID restrictions finished. I got to the games, and that was the first games I'd been for 20 years. And I feel now that you cut me and I've got red and white blood, and I never thought that I would have that love for a sport and club ever. I just thought, oh yeah, I support that team or I support that team and that's it. Now it's like, this is part of my life, and I can't go a day without looking onto the Swans app and reading newses, anything like that. I need to know everything, you know, and that's how I feel. It's a huge part of me, and as I touched on before, I've made some great friends, and if it wasn't for the Swans and those trips, I wouldn't have those best friends in my life, and that's a big thing for me.
Which is absolutely fantastic. I know I've gone back and forth with you because you've made several fun trips over to Australia, and I've seen your pictures and it absolutely enjoyed it. I know you've gotten pictures with players and with the coaching staff. I know that you just recently on one of your socials put out your photo that you did with Horst Longmire, and I
Yeah,
remember asking what it was like. So I just really quickly because we have done that, and he has recently retired. Your thoughts, your interaction with Horst, because as you told me in our interaction, he was fascinated by you as a Scottishman, loving AFL Aussie rules.
I can't remember which game it was. I think it was a Bombers game. I think I did the banner that night as well on the pitch. But the VFL was playing on the oval outside the SCG, and I remember him standing there, and I'm thinking, I was starstruck,
Hmm.
and I didn't have a lot of confidence back then. And I thought, no, I'll just leave him to it. He's doing his job. He's watching the young guys play. He's watching the seconds. But I just went up and I was with someone and they says, go and talk to him. Just go and talk to him. So I went across and I remember saying, hi, coach. Speaking to him like a hi, coach.
I
And he
love
heard the
it.
accent straight away and was like, you're a Scotsman. And then we just got talking. Like he says, do you live here? And I was like, no, I'm on holiday and I'm just here. And how long are you here? And just that kind of interaction, just a little, but it was genuine. It wasn't just like someone going, a run of the mill questions to someone. It felt genuine,
Mhm.
and it was like good to see you and have fun and safe trip home. Oh, it was brilliant. And the man's a sweetheart. Sorry, there's a police siren or whatever going past. The man's an absolute gentleman. He's a sweetheart, and yeah, yeah. For a big, tall, broad guy like that, he seems to be like soft, a soft guy. Does that make sense?
And he's a giant teddy bear, as I've
That's
heard
it.
that the,
Yeah,
the the
yeah.
call is, which is really funny because if you see him in the coach's box, you think he's hellfire and brimstone,
Yeah.
which
Well,
is
I put that as a wee comment saying that the phones in the SCG directors coaches box will be happy that they're not getting shouted down.
and Dean Cox doesn't have to worry about needing a hearing aid on the left side. Got to have a little bit of fun with that. All right,
Exactly.
as you said, you dive in, you bleed red and white. So I got to ask this: favorite player of the past and favorite player currently on the Swans list.
See, Donny, this is a tough one for me because I like everyone,
Hmm.
right? I like everyone, but in the past, we'll start in the past. I've had a few favourite players like Jared McVeigh.
Hmm.
I love Jared McVeigh, and I met him just this year. I was lucky enough to attend a coach's brief before the Kangaroos game back in July, and he was the coach that was taking part, running the thing. And I was like thinking, God, I loved you as a kid. Well, not a kid, but when
Hmm.
I loved him. Um, Adam Goods, loved Adam Goods. Who doesn't love him? You know what I mean? Another guy was Ty Kennelly. So Ty Kennelly meant a lot to me because he's not from Scotland, but he's from Ireland, and it was just from. It's like my neck of the woods, isn't it? It's like on my doorstep. 2002 into three when I was there. He had not long signed up, and I thought, this sport's big as I thought. If there's someone from Ireland drafted into Australia playing, that's where the sport became real eye opening for me. Was seeing Ty Kennelly there, and well, I met him. I met him one night in a bar outside his SAG, but yeah, it was good. Currently, I've got a few favourite players. I can't really put one. Brodie Grundy, who I've met a few times, and I've got a bit of a connection with him. Sent a couple messages back and forth. I've got something beside me. Look, I got my Guernsey as number 4, and he signed it.
Fantastic.
Um,
That is awesome.
Brilliant. But it's just Isaac Heaney and Logan McDonald.
Hmm.
That's my players for my current players, and I can't. It'd be unfair to single one out, but
It is. It really is. I sometimes start it with I know it's like picking your favorite child as a parent. Like you really don't want to, but there's sometimes you can, but it is very, very difficult. I'll raise my hand here. I'm a huge Dane Rampy fan. I will be so
yes,
sad when he retires because I just absolutely love him because he's a character. He's not your normal footy player. He's got some eccentric parts. I mean, I know that when I received a Rampy robe in the mail at one time. So I will, during the cold winter nights up here sometimes, I will don the Rampy robe just for fun. And even my wife calls it the Rampy robe now. So
have
it's,
you got the hair to match?
I don't, unfortunately. I'm not that good. I mean, I don't look like a playboy that needs a cigar after a game like he does. So it's absolutely fun. I love Dane Rampy. I absolutely adore James Jordan. I think his addition this last year was absolutely magnificent.
JJ's been the best. I think he was one of the best. Bringing him in
Hmm.
from the three big ones last year, like with Taylor Adams, Grundy,
Yep.
and I think JJ's been the best. He's just flown under the radar, and he's Mister Consistent.
Well, he took over that lockdown role, and when Ryan Clark got let go, I was a little worried that we don't have that tagger, we don't have that
Yeah,
lockdown defender, and Jordan goes, "I'll take that spot," and absolutely seamlessly fit into this group. It's been
absolutely.
magnificent. I love Harry Cunningham too. I sometimes I like the guys that don't always get the pub. Like it's easy to love the Errol Gouldens, the Chad Warners, the Isaac Heaney's, the Brody Grundys, the big names that everybody in the competition knows. Sometimes it's the workhorse guys, the Dane Rampeys, the Harry Cunninghams that I absolutely adore because I know that those guys are just as important as the superstars.
That's
So
right.
that'll be
Yep.
fun. And for me with Rampy, it's like I know his time in the Swans Guernsey is coming short, so it'll be difficult to see him go. But his eccentricness is always one of those things that I
Where
absolutely
would we have
love.
been without Rampy? He was injured a couple of times this last season, and see when he came back, we went solid again.
Hmm.
It just shows his leadership and character on field.
Yep. Yep.
You know,
100% agree on that, which is actually a great transition, Liam. I absolutely love it because I gotta ask thoughts on this season because I know some fans, the grand final and the result is one that I don't think any of us want to remember. Trust me, there's PTSD amongst many Swans fans. But your thoughts on this season because I'm interested as an international fan that probably like again, your thoughts.
um, I think we hit form too early. That's one thing I can say. I think we hit the heights too early, and when the season progressed, we started getting the injuries. Um, where others was the opposite. They got a lot of injuries, and don't get me wrong, it helped us, get that big lead in the ladder. But I think the season's been, it's went well. I think it went well, apart from that little patch of 6 games where we started struggling. And, there was a couple injuries and a couple of field issues, the Isaac Heaney ban for the little flick in the face. You
Don't
know,
get me started.
I was at that game. I was at that game at Marvel, and it was right in front of me, and I was like, "Oh God!" I felt like a soccer fan.
Mhm.
But I think I was quite impressed with the season, and I was lucky enough to get back for the grand final. You see, I attended the grand final. I became a bit of a cult hero that weekend with the radio and the newspapers and TV. But nah, I was pleased with the season, and I think this coming season we won't be far away. I don't think final, but definitely finals. That's
And
that's what I think. I never aim too high.
you step ladder. You don't want to make it too easy.
Exactly,
Make finals, and then the rest of it is icing
exactly.
is icing on the proverbial cake. I'm
At the
one
end of the
hundred.
day, no
Yep. I'm
flag is won in May, June, July. It's
Yep.
always September. You could finish eighth, but your form hits right into finals. You
Mhm.
could win that place. You could be first all the way and just completely lose it.
Yep. The teams that
That's
you
what I
the
love
teams
about
that
this.
the teams that everybody was talking about come finals time were sixth and seventh, and that was Hawthorn and Brisbane and Hawthorn and the Western Bulldogs because they were playing the best football going into
Correct.
the finals. So I mean, there's still some people that are like, well, if they didn't play each other, how far could the two of them went? It would have been very, very interesting to see how the finals would have been different. But I'm 100% with you. I agree. I've seen it on a few places. I understand that the grand final leaves a bad taste in our mouths. I 100% understand that. But the football that they played was absolutely sensational. Do I also agree that they peaked too early? Absolutely. You cannot peak in June. You cannot peak in July. You got to peak
Exactly.
in September. So I agree. I agree with you 100%. I think we peaked too early. The injuries exposed us a little bit. It gave the competition more time to figure us out, which is the reason why I think we had a little bit more of a tougher test come finals time than I think
Yep.
some people were expecting. Is it horrible and atrocious as some of the fans, and again, fan culture sometimes can be a little bit maddening? No, I don't think it was one of those where the season is a disgrace because we didn't win a grand final. I get that we were really, really good, but it's going to happen. There's still some growing pains this group is going to have to do. We did get exposed a little bit when Dane, as you said, when Dane Rampy was hurt. That's when we had our struggles. So
Yeah.
we're going to have to learn how to play without him back there. That's something they're going to have to learn. I'm very fascinated to see how Dean Cox handles it. In fact, actually, I'm gonna twist my next question to kind of make it make sense. As you kind of said, finals next year. But for me, I go with this. Horse steps away. He steps away and he's retiring, stepping away, which again, thank you, Horse, so much for that. Dean Cox steps in. Did that change your expectations for next year at all, going with Dean Cox? Because for me, I'm super excited now because he gains a really, really good list. And I think he brings some new ideas, some changes that I think could be good for this team.
Absolutely agree with what you said. It's never changed. It's never changed my perception of what's going to be, expectation of what's going to happen. He was Horse's number two, so he'll have his own ideas, but he'll still have the ideas of Horse and that where he's been learning. He's been on his learning curve for the last 5, 10 years, so he brings in a lot of experience. It's not someone new that's came from a different club. He's been brought up through the ranks that way, and I'm really excited. I'm really excited. I like
Mhm.
Cox. I like Cox as a person, and seeing the photos recently and footage of training, he's in there. He's holding the pads up. He's in there instead of just standing on the touchline.
Mhm.
That means a lot to me.
Yeah, he's doing the specky bag. I
Yeah,
had I
that's
had
it.
to I had to I had to give a crack at that. I thought it was awesome. But he's still doing the specky bag. And
Yeah, yeah,
have you
definitely.
have you have you seen his initial speech to the club that like the first time he had to sit down in front of the group? The Swans put it out on their website. If you have it, I'll make sure and send it to you. It was perfect. I
Yeah,
I cannot think of a better way to start off his tenure than telling the guys, he goes, everything that I'm doing is for you guys. I am
yep,
never going to make a decision that's best for me. I'm last. Club, players, staff, me. I love that he did that. He showed his priorities to the group. I cannot wait. I think that I know that when West Coast was there was a lot of talks after Simo stepped down, was relieved of his duties, as
Yep.
they say. So many people were like, Dean Cox is it, Dean Cox is it. And when he flat out told everybody, I'm not going to West Coast, in the back of my mind, I already knew Sydney isn't going to broadcast it, but I think they've already got coaching waiting for Dean Cox. I knew Dean Cox was the next coach of the Sydney Swans even before Horse had even decided to step down. I
Correct.
had
Yeah.
said that. I Sydney was too smart not to set lock that up, so and I knew it. And then when I found out that Horse was stepping down, I'm like, Dean Cox is the head coach, isn't he? And like, not even an hour later, I see Dean Cox signs 3-year extension to be the head coach of the Sydney Swans. I'm like, well, that was the least surprising thing ever. So,
As soon as he turned West Coast Eagles down, you knew exactly where it was
yep.
going. You knew exactly what was happening.
I said this. I said the same thing. I said that I said he's the coach in waiting without it being told to everybody because Sydney didn't want to broadcast it. They wanted to let Horse be the head. Don't have to worry about it. And then when Horse decides to walk away, Dean is right there. He's already been kind of groomed for it. I know that he was at the draft and then he met some of the draftees. So there was a little bit of the back of me going, they're setting him up to be the next guy. And so it was like I said,
The
a
only
little.
shocking part
Yep.
was the horse's announcement. I didn't expect it to be then.
Nope. No.
You know,
What
if I
I
was expecting to be an announcement of him stepping down, I would have thought it might have been a couple months before that,
mhm.
and not first day of training. You know, it's but yeah, nah, it's exciting, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, but oddly, it actually is perfect timing since they're starting preseason training that you get
Correct.
the
Yeah,
new
yeah,
guy
that's that as
in.
well.
I think that's honestly why it happened the way it is. Like I said, I think it was just more shocking because you would think, well, give a couple of weeks after the grand final, step down, get everything. But I think he got everybody through the draft period because he didn't want to be the kind of overshadow it because everybody was going to talk when he stepped down. He gets through the draft. Once the drafts are done, then he does it because he gets it in clear air. He doesn't have to worry about taking the steam out of anything. So I honestly, I know it was a little bit of a shock. It was perfect timing, just the way everything played out. So
Yeah,
all right, I want to have a little bit of fun, Liam. I love this question just because for me as a footy head, I always think of this. So for one day, I'm going to install you as the list manager of the Sydney Swans men's program. All 17 other clubs are free. You can snatch one player to join the Swans to get us over the hump and win a grand final. Who would that player be for you and why?
you ready for controversy?
Oh, I love controversy. What's up?
Toby Green.
I love it. Please explain.
I just think he's always there. He's in about. He's in about the rucks and stuff like that, and he's just there. He's always there. He's a player that you love to hate. He's in everyone's face, you know, but he kicks these snap goals out of nothing from scraps, and I love that. I love that, and I think yeah, he plays for the enemy, the Giants, but I would love him in my team. You know, any day of the week, he'd be in my team.
I've said this. I've said this a couple of times, and I still stand by it. The player that I would bring in personally is a former Swans player, and I'd bring Alir back
Well,
because
yeah, yeah,
that's the
yeah.
one thing defensively that we're missing a little bit now is that intercepting defender, and he plays that position so well. I would so love to bring back Alir to be that intercepting defender, just to give a little bit of help to Tommy McCartan and
Yeah.
Melican, just to give them a little bit extra cover. That would be my one for me. So it's always.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a
Again,
good point.
there's no wrong answer in that. It's your
Exactly.
opinion, and it's fantastic. It's just interesting. That would be a rat bag. That would be a rat bag. So much fun with Pally and Green on the same team.
Imagine the fine bag. The fine list would just get bigger and
Oh,
bigger.
jeez, yeah. So it would be interesting having those two on the same
Yeah.
squad. So alrighty, so everybody knows I am a huge AFLW supporter. I'm a huge supporter of the women's game. So I got to ask, I know with the time difference and the games being played a little, do you keep track of the AFLW? And if so, do you have a favorite player for the women's side?
I have to be honest. I'm not a huge fan, and that's due to like. the hours and the my work
Hmm.
commitment and stuff. Don't get me wrong, I'll look at the scores. I'll look to see who's won. And if there is a game on where I'm off work, I will make the effort and watch. Um, I've been to a women's game in Sydney at Henson Park last, not the season past, the one before, um, Swans Collingwood. I think it was a Pride round, and the atmosphere was really good. It was a family atmosphere. It wasn't like you were in an actual footy game, but it was more a family atmosphere. Um, I just find, no disrespect to them, I just find that the game's a bit slower for my liking and a bit low scoring. Um, but I've got huge respect for them. Favorite player, I've met. Here we go. I've met a couple, but Haley Boulas is just retired.
Hmm.
I met her just in July, and what an awesome human being she was. Um, yeah, so I kind of kept an eye on her and Chloe Malloy as well. Yeah, the superstar of the club, and I was gutted to hear when she did her ACL. Um, yeah, and who was the other one? I was thinking Cynthia Hamilton.
Hmm.
That's the ones I was keeping my eye open. And yeah, that's all I can really say on it because, as I said to you, I'm not a huge follower, and I should be. And I always tell myself I should watch more of it, but it's just yourself with the time
It's
difference.
not
Things
easy.
can get
Yep.
things can get difficult, and it's not really promoted as much. It's better now than it was,
Hmm.
but it's still not promoted as much as a men's game.
Hmm.
It needs to be pushed a bit more.
100%, 100%. Because actually, that was my next one. Is there something the AFLW could do to draw you in more as a fan? I understand work commitments. Again, being an international fan, it throws a few other curveballs that the Australian fans don't have to worry about. They don't have to worry about the time difference. They don't have to
Yeah, that's
worry
right.
about knowing when the game is on, when it isn't. Again, internet is kind of essential if you're a global member, that if you don't have internet, you can't exactly watch the game. So is there something that could draw you in, that'll help you maybe watch the games a little bit more?
Um, that's a tough one, Donny. Um, I can't really come up with an answer with that one, to be honest.
That's fine.
Yeah, I can't. It's just promote it more, and it's. I don't know what they can do to make the game a bit more free flowing. It's yeah. As I say, I find it a bit slower, and I don't know why that is. Um, I don't know if you've got a thought in
Well,
that process.
here's the way I say it to a lot of people, is that I is the AFLW is a different game. And it's
Hmm.
not just because they're women. It's also, you also got to remember, the rules are different. They play 16 aside, not 18.
Hmm.
They play with this oddball, what they call lasso rule, which is if you kick or handball the ball out of play and it is not touched in any way, it is then a turnover. It's not just a ball up, or a ball in. So there, in some situations, I think the women's game punishes the women's skills more than the men's. And I've said it numerous times. I think the men should be playing the women's side, 16 aside, lasso rule, less rotations. And I think the women should be playing 18 aside, no lasso rule, more rotations, personally. Because I think if you're gonna promote the women's game, having less players on the field and then expecting them to score as much as the men, who have longer kicks, they have more years of coaching, they have far more infrastructure personally when it comes to not only the clubs, but just the overall kind of structure of the competition.
Yeah,
That's the reason that it's different. And it's like, as I've said to a few people online, and again, I know it's toxic to approach some of the people online because they're the proverbial misogynist, that they just don't want women playing. That's just plain and simply
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Um, that you have to understand that this competition is only 9 seasons in. Next year will be its 10th season. I'm sorry, if we go back in time in the AFL, VFL at that time, and go to 1903 when their 10th season, I bet you the scores are going to be a little bit closer. I bet you the skill is going to be a little bit closer. You
yeah. Of course.
cannot
Yeah.
you cannot compare the two right now. You just can't. Is the women's game growing in leaps and bounds because of the skill level that's coming through the ranks over these next 5 to 10 years? Absolutely. I
Yeah,
think the women's game is going to get better and more entertaining over the next 10 years because you're going to get girls that never had to stop playing. They've been playing NAB League, they've been playing Kick since they could when they can. They could start at 3 and 4 years old. Previously, they could start at 4, but at 12, that's it. No more because there was
yeah,
no more paths to professionalism. So they had to go play netball. They had to go play basketball. They had to go play cricket because NAB League was it. Once NAB League was done, I mean, once Auskick was done, women's footy was done. I mean, there were professionals, but it wasn't as big. There wasn't as many women. So the fact that the AFLW is here, you're starting to see it. You're seeing clubs now that have as many women's teams as they have men's teams. You're seeing leagues like I remember in the first 5 years of several small country leagues that they had one women's team in like 50 kilometers, and now they've got 50 within 50 kilometers. Like that's how much growth the women's game has. I've said it numerous times. The women's game is where the growth is happening in the game of football right now. That's what
yeah.
the AFL needs to focus on. The men's game, I don't know if it's going to grow very much more because they've pretty much eaten up all of the available areas that they possibly can. Tassie's coming in very soon. Will we see Northern Territory come in? We'll have to see when it comes to the 20th club. I'm not 100% sure if the AFL is confident that the Northern Territory market can handle a professional club. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But with women's, there's clubs popping up all the time that are getting women's clubs, that they're getting youth ages. So I say to many people, I understand that it's slow, but that's also because you're still in year 9, year 10 of many of these women playing professional football. Give it 10 years, and I know it's odd to say, give it 10 years. Trust me, this women's game is going to get better and better. And especially this class this year is absolutely sensational. And a lot of them are going to come in and instantly make an impact in the AFLW. I absolutely cannot wait. I know I've went on my soapbox. Sorry about that. I'll put it over in the corner as per usual. So my next question again. This is
That's
more.
it. Actually, that's a good point, and that's I've taken that on board because you don't think of the big picture that way,
Yep.
and I feel kind of guilty by being tunnel visioned. You know what I mean? But it's just, yeah,
I will.
that's a very
I've
good
said that.
thought.
Sorry, I've said this to a few people. I will never guilt trip you for not watching it because again, to each their own. But
Yeah,
I'm one of those that I've said to a few people, if you're just not watching it because it's not high scoring enough, you're focused on the wrong thing when it comes to when it comes to women's Aussie rules, because the scoring is going to be different because of the rules and the way it is. Do they know that? That's the biggest thing. I think sometimes some fans don't know. The women play a completely different game rules wise than the men. That's just the honest truth.
mm,
So I think that's the other thing that I think is frustrating a little bit is because is they're expecting what the AFL is now. Well, the AFL in 1903, 1904 is a little bit more like what the AFLW is right now. It's
yeah,
growing. It's going to get better. It's going to take some time. You just have to let it mature. I mean, you're not going to plant a seed in your potting soil and just expect to have a tomato plant the next day. That's just not the way it is. It's going to take
yeah.
water, time, and energy. So, all right, have fun. Let's have some fun. I know this person. I know this personally because, and you've talked about it a little bit. You have had the opportunity to go to Australia. I know that I see your pictures all the time. It is absolutely enjoyable. Kind of go back to me a little bit. Your first time seeing a game and how cool was it to see this game that you had seen on the telly so many times live and in person?
So again, going back to it was 2003. I was on a working, excuse me, a working holiday visa, and it took me to Melbourne for the Grand Prix for the F1. And that's, I think it was the weekend before or the weekend after. I can't remember the exact dates. The pre-season tournament games were on it, the community series. Can't remember what it was called back then, but there was a game on in Telstra Dome. Now Telstra Dome is now known as Marvel,
Hmm.
and it was Richmond versus North Melbourne. And I thought, I'm here, I may as well go. So in I go, indoor, the roof was closed and everything. And I was like, what the, you know, I mean, watching
Hmm.
this game, like, what's going on? What? But the atmosphere was amazing. The atmosphere was amazing, and I was like, I haven't got a clue, Donny. I haven't got a clue what's going on, but I'm in love with this game, and I want to learn this game. So fast forward a few weeks, and I would get back up to Sydney, and I decided to go to Sydney Swans home games, and week in week out, I went to the home games, and I've not looked back. You know, that's just everything about the game was just it drew me in.
Which is,
So
yeah.
yeah, loved it. And my first Sydney Swans game was on Anzac round against Melbourne Demons, and they were destroying us until the fourth quarter, and we scored 10 goals and won it.
Isn't
Ten
that a
goals,
great, isn't that a
ten
great
goals in
memory?
the fourth
First game.
quarter. You know, the beers were flowing that night.
I love it. And the best part is that the first game you get to go to, you get to see them win, which is absolutely fantastic.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah,
It's the one fear that I would have is that I would go over there and as I would go over there and if I only saw one game, I'd see them lose and it would it would kind of dampen it a little bit, but you want to know what? It would still be a fun experience. It's on my bucket list. I know that I've been asked by several of my friends over in Australia that if I ever get over there, I may couch sit amongst several states because I know I've got friends in Queensland, friends in Victoria, friends in South Australia, friends in WA. It's just like
and I bet not
I
one
may
of
just
them says no. I bet every single one says yes. Of course you can.
if I can pull it off, I would love to. I'd probably be in like a month to be able to do everything that I'd love to do. I'd like to get to the SCG, love to get up to love to get up to Brizzy or the Gold Coast,
I'd love
get
to get to
down.
Brisbane. I've never been. I've never been in Queensland for a game. I'd love to go up that way for a game.
Yeah, love to get down to Melbourne. Hopefully, maybe even slip down to Geelong. That would be fun. Get over to the SA, see the Adelaide Oval, Norwood Oval, because I have a few friends at the Norwood Footy Club and the Sandful, and then get out west to see Swan District, see Optus Stadium, hopefully, and be able to catch maybe a game over there. It'd be fantastic. I know
Never
I
been
can
there
just.
either. My sister lives in Perth, and they're West Coast Eagles fans.
Uh-huh.
Um, so they've been getting it hard for me for a couple of seasons. But we were in 2022 when I was there. We because there's another guy I went to school with lives in Perth, and he's a Freo fan.
Mhm.
And we were meant to go to the Dockers versus Lions game, but we all got COVID like days leading up to
Oh,
it.
jeez.
We all missed the game, you know, and never got to the game. And I was gutted because I was so looking forward to get to Optus Stadium.
Mhm.
You know, I really wanted to go, but you know, these things happen.
Yep, they definitely happen for sure. So, all right, I want to have a little bit of fun. As you said, you've been to games. So I've asked this of a few of my Australian friends. So I asked this: when you went to the footy, did you have a go-to food at the footy that you think is the best?
Huh, 4 and 20 pie. Can't go wrong with a 4 and 20 pie with some tomato ketchup on top.
Yep. Tomato sauce for sure. I
What
know
else?
surprisingly hot chips has really rocketed up over the last year when it comes to many of my Australian fans. Hot chips has really taken the
Hot
lead
chips
on.
or just chips as we call them in Scotland.
Yep. And then as you said, you've got to see several games out there. Do you have an ideal place that you like to sit to watch the footy?
I like sitting on the front row. I like either first or second row from the front. Um, People like to sit further back because they get to see the whole pitch from like a bit of an angle.
Hmm.
I like being down up close and personal and getting the smell of that churned up turf. You know, that grass smell. I love that. And it just reminds me when I played soccer and rugby as a kid. I just love that smell.
Hmm.
But just to be up close and personal to when the play is there and to see your heroes. Because at the end of the day, those players are heroes.
Yeah.
Like they're your heroes, sorry. You know, and I just I love it. I love being up close, personal, hearing them call, all the calls, the shouts between each other, and you hear it all in the instructions. And also to give the umpires a bit of grief when they're there, you know.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely
But no, front
love
row
it.
for me. Front row, the closer the better for me.
Yep. Nothing, again, to each their own. Whatever
Exactly.
experience you want to have is absolutely fantastic. Again, it's you get a plethora. Some people want to sit up because they want to be able to see the tactics of the game. Other people they want to be close to that cheer squad. They want to be near the action. They want to hear the tackles. They want to hear
Oh,
the
definitely.
foot kicking the ball. So again, I will not discourage any. I'm taking it all in. Like I said, when I do get over there, I want to be able to test a few different ones, and then
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
I always end my episodes with this. Favorite game of football you have ever seen, live, on the telly, doesn't matter. Favorite game of football you have ever seen.
Oh, it has to go back to the one I've mentioned, and that was my very first Swans game against the Melbourne Demons, because that's when we were down and out and we came back and won. And that one just will stick with me forever. But also, my first game in 2022, when I went back to Sydney after 20 years of no footy, like live in person, we got beaten. It was against the Gold Coast Suns.
Hmm.
I thought it was fantastic because I didn't care about the score. I felt like I was back home, and it's just little moments like that really pull on your heartstrings,
Hmm.
and making a lot of friends and meeting them for the first time, a lot of them for the first time, and it's fantastic.
Hmm.
It's fantastic. Whoever invented the sport they need like a knighthood. You know,
I will not disagree with you. Like I said, I'm like with you again. I haven't met some of them in person, but I have met so many wonderful people in Australia that love this sport, and I go back and forth with many of them all the time. I've met players, I've met umpires, I've met fans, and everything like that. I just enjoy this sport so much. The reason that I do this podcast is because I love this sport so much, and it's guys like you, Liam, that I've met online. I've never met you in person. I've talked with you online. This is our first time actually interacting with each other via video. This is full disclosure here, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first time Lee and I have ever talked person to person. I know through a camera, ever, and I just thoroughly enjoy it hearing another person that's just as passionate about the Swans as I am. So that is it. That is all my questions. Again, I just love hearing the passion from you, Liam. It is fantastic. Thank you so much for hopping on the podcast. It has been magnificent being able to sit down and having a chat with you today,
no, my pleasure, mate. My pleasure. Anytime.
which is absolutely fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this episode of Donnie's Disposals. Keep an eye out. More supporter series still to come. I have some more American and international fans to sit down and have a chat about their club and their love of this wonderful game that we call football. That'll do it for this episode. Again, if you like what you're listening to, please like and subscribe, and we will be back with more footy coverage very, very soon.